The future is now. Site reliability engineering to me is one of those places where it it's almost too easy to fall into the trap of just taking action after action after action. We talk about proactive maintenance or proactive monitoring and all those things. I think sustainability is an extension of that premise. How can I plan for the workload in a way where I can still meet my SLA, but do it in a way that I spread the work out over cheaper, more sustainable compute? I think SRE is really positioned well because sitting at the point of observability, sitting at the point of architecture, sitting at the point of delivery, that's an essential pinnacle where you have that all-seeing eye to be able to interact and kind of push and pull and make differences, I think, everywhere.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Making of the SRE Omelette podcast. Sustainability is no longer just an ambition. Over the last few years, we're starting to see companies actively doing things and changing their behavior to be more sustainable. There is a lot of talk around improving how we manage assets, facilities, and infrastructure to drive clean energy transition and decarbonization. And I can think of no better person to speak on this subject than our guest today, Mike Hollinger. Mike is a distinguished engineer, master inventor, and CTO of IBM Sustainability Software. I'm so excited to have him here with us today. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Kevin, it is absolutely a pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. And howdy from Austin.
Oh, yes. I remember we first talked about having this
Yeah.
conversation when I visited the beautiful Austin Design Studio. The circle is now complete. Mike, can you get us started by sharing with the audience how you arrived at this influential role?
I have a background in sitting between subsystems, between different pieces of technology. So my formal education is in computer engineering. And for those of you that don't know, that straddles computer science and electrical engineering. My first job in IBM was writing firmware for our hardware team. And I've kind of moved in the layers of the stack until I was actually building an AI solution that we folded into the Maximo organization. For those that don't know, Maximo is a large set of capabilities now in a suite, the Maximo Application Suite, that are designed to help people leverage their data and drive business outcomes. So, being the AI guy amongst the asset management people, or being the software person amongst the hardware people, that's always been kind of my career track.
We have another thing in common. I also graduated with the electrical computer engineering degree,
Ah,
but
nice,
I haven't done much hardware
nice. There you
engineering
go.
since I started working.
Nice, nice, nice. I get to fix one wire on one card one time, so I have that.
So, Mike, I'm curious, as a distinguished engineer for sustainability portfolio, what does sustainability mean to you in the context of reliability engineering and facilities and assets?
You know, I love trying to define this by actually backing away from sustainability for a second. You hear the term ESG rattling around, right?
Yes.
And we just kind of lump it into what's your ESG report, and it begins to define something in someone's head. But taking those three letters apart, like the E, the S, and the G, for a second, right? Talking about what sustainability means in terms of environmental, in terms of social reporting and sustainable reporting, in terms of governance practices of all of the above, right? The premise of creating intelligent assets, the premise of creating a system that can self heal
Mhm.
or that can tell you what's wrong with it, or taking a super complex machine or something as big as a building and enabling that to live and breathe, as one of our customers might say. That's what sustainability means to me. It's that ability for the system to not only just tell you, hey, there's an alert firing, but to offer a suggestion on what the next
Mm,
action is that might try to save energy or save costs down the line, right? Those things directly impact someone's carbon footprint on the one
mm-hmm.
hand, but they also impact the bottom line, right? They impact the choice of where you're choosing to spend your money, and they maybe help free up money for other areas.
Mm. I love that quote. To live and breathe, an intelligent system to give recommendation on where to spend the effort to reduce carbon footprint as well as impact on the bottom line. So, Mike, is reducing cost, saving money, the intersect between ESG, SRE, and intelligent assets?
Well, I think that money is a big piece of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are part, as IBM, part of a for-profit business,
Yeah.
but our customers are for-profit, nonprofit,
Right.
government, right? And the incentives for all of those are different. If I talk
Mm,
to someone who's uh, a roadworks manager for a given
right.
state, so Department of Transportation head, they're going to care about their constituents and the
Mm,
constituents' ability to get where they need to go or to transit materials and goods where it needs to go. That service that they're providing is a roadway, right? Or a
mm-hmm.
bridge or a tunnel. In SRE, there's a similar premise of us, providing a service to enable someone, right?
Right.
And I think that there's an interesting kind of parallel between the two, because if I do my job, you never notice that I was here in some situations, right?
Yes, very true. Very
You know,
true.
that's I think a similar thing in both sides.
That is totally true. I always joke many people think SRE as firefighters. Call us when there's a fire, but I would love to be in the state where people think SRE
Hmm.
as more of a fire prevention. So,
Absolutely.
Mike, talk about sustainability isn't new. I'm curious, in your talk with customers, do you feel there was a collective aha moment that changed how companies look at sustainability?
Oh, I think that there hasn't been an aha moment. It's not like suddenly overnight something changed, right? But there's this kind of groundswell moment that we're in
Mm,
where you hear from constituents, you hear from customers, you hear from suppliers even, or people that are buying, people that are in procurement, this question of, hey, what is it that it's costing me, right? What are you having to do to produce this thing that's in front of me? So it's interesting right now because for IBM has been around for over a century.
mm-hmm.
I was part of our hardware team, like we talked about, and we have a massive supply chain, and we operate in many countries, in many locations, in many buildings, and we've been tracking our environmental footprint for
Yeah.
decades, right? We've been reporting on that for decades, and we, I think, are one of those that has been leading the pack there.
Yeah.
Now, outside of IBM, there are other companies that are similar, taking steps forward that have been always at the forefront. In fact, I actually went up to Montreal and
Yeah.
spoke with a customer who provided, for the first time this past year, a combined ESG report and financial report,
Financial. Hmm.
right? So not only were they reporting on the health of the business and projecting forward, they were also saying, here's how we're working on equity for our employees and um, in our customers different cities and places where we do business. Here's how we are pushing our suppliers to be transparent, right?
Right.
And that I think is a little bit different compared to say 5 or 10 years ago.
So it sounds like a collective curiosity from consumers, customers, supply chain asking those questions that has led to the change.
Right. There's an interesting parallel to data privacy, right? Um, and the EU with
Yeah.
GDPR, or California in the US, or almost every geography has something similar in some form, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we see a similar upcoming or already kind of the beginnings of
Mm-hmm.
this sort of reporting being required. And all of this comes back to, at the end of the day, data,
Right.
right? And it's trying to extract from that data some meaning or some insight
Mm-hmm.
that you can then drive an action.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
the being in technology, we love data. We love generating data. You know, we have so much data that we call it exhaust data at a certain point, right? And and it costs money to keep it around.
Yes.
And the the interesting opportunity for a lot of our customers is, how do I take that thing that I'm paying money to keep and start extracting value from it, right? To drive my business or to drive transparency for my suppliers or so on and so
Right.
forth.
Right.
And we're
Right.
starting to see that we can now start leveraging that.
Mike, I don't know if you know this. Us site reliability engineers, we love data. And you're totally right. Often it is easy to just keep the data because we never know when we
Absolutely.
may need it again. Bringing this love of data close to facilities and assets,
Mhm.
can you share some of the challenges your customers may have faced?
There's a problem that comes up in managing this kind of stuff, because you might hear data and think it's all the same, right? It's not.
Yeah.
And the broadest line I can try to start compartmentalizing things in is to say there's this IT world that a lot of us live in. There's also this OT world, or operational technology world, that a lot of the real world lives in, right? And in digitizing or modernizing at a certain point in time, if you take any given project, they're going to apply the best of breed technology at that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
We might try to future proof as much as we can future
Right.
proof. And and we make a choice. We know that we're going to do something that's going to be a trade-off of better, cheaper, faster, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
choose two. And for a lot of companies, what I see is that they've made the effort to digitize parts of their supply chain or digitize
Mm-hmm.
their facilities, and they now have this operational technology infrastructure, this OT infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
that speaks in terms of SCADA alarms, and all of the stuff that powers the smart lights that are in my building, or
Right.
the thermostats that are managing the heating and cooling units and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And that's a different network and a different set of infrastructure and different requirements with different protocols from all the infrastructure that operates the IT side of the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
The back office,
Right.
the day-to-day stuff that lets me walk in the door and have my security work because my badge is, mine, right?
Right.
Those are two different systems. So bridging that
Mm.
IT to OT divide, that's a challenge that we have right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Right.
And just, it's as simple as, this system speaks in a protocol that's talking bits and bytes and buses and kilohertz
Mm-hmm.
updates. That system talks TCP/IP and networking, right? How do I communicate this super high frequency thing to a network that's off in the ether somewhere in the cloud,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's private cloud, public cloud, doesn't matter. But how do I do that? And how do I do it at a scale that
Mm-hmm.
matters?
Right.
So that challenge ends up creating this, I think, really tangible example of how edge compute can help address these types of
Mm.
situations. It creates this tangible example of how um, aggregating data and presenting it appropriately to drive a dashboard or to drive an insight or drive an AI model or whatever the case is,
Right.
that's really, frankly, the challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I have this massive haystack of every sensor from every system in
Right.
every building worldwide for my enterprise, what do I do with that, right? And a similar thing on dashboarding.
Yeah.
Whenever anyone asks me, "Hey, we need a dashboard," I my immediate answer is, "Cool. What decision do you want to make from that?"
Exactly.
Right? Right? And helping to work through that decision-making process, that outcome that you're trying to drive, tells you what data becomes necessary,
Yep.
right? And what truly is going to be valuable for you.
My favorite question, similar to yours, is what question do you want answered?
Yep, that's a good one.
And
Yep.
with it, we would know what data you need to give us your insights. Because, like you said, there's so much data.
Right.
If we
Right.
just
Right.
present them on a dashboard, people would simply go, now what? Mike, while we're on this subject, can you tell a story of how a customer was able to take successful action from the data?
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest examples I can give you is actually a public reference for
Okay.
IBM in the sustainability space, right? But there is a massive, massive bridge, the Sonnenbelt Bridge in
Mm,
Denmark. Sonnenbelt operates this massive suspension bridge that is designed to last for multiple
mm,
centuries, right? And the entire thing's instrumented, but it's in a sea. It's in the real
yeah,
world. It has to deal with sunlight, it has to
right.
deal with wind and erosion and rust and algae and all these different things. And the fusing of visual data with sensor
Mm-hmm.
data, right, to be able to operate that mega
Right.
asset. That's what allows the Sun and Belt team to do things where they don't have to put someone in a rock climbing outfit
Right.
to go out every single day to cover just a part of the bridge, right? They can get a much better view of the entire asset over time
Mm,
and choose where they're going to invest, right? That's a great
right, right,
example to
right.
offer. We it's amazing because it's that confluence of data, of analytics, and then driving an outcome back to the business to
Mm-hmm.
drive, choosing where I'm going to spend time to fix issues or to proactively fix issues.
With data, we can be objective on our prioritization and make
Absolutely.
decisions.
Absolutely.
Mike, there was a viral social media post a few weeks and months back, I think, that originated from someone taking a video of a roller coaster, and the video shows that the structure was being disconnected every time the roller coaster goes to a corner. I
Yeah.
remember I was thinking,
Yeah, I
oh my
saw that.
gosh, this would be a perfect use case for the drone inspection to keep it safe versus being notified by customer or worse
hmm
yet, from the news.
Absolutely. And that's why I bring up the civil infrastructure example, right? I mean, if if you take anything as big as
Mm.
complex as your roller
Mm-hmm.
coaster or as a bridge or as a
Yeah,
tunnel, the part you see is just a
yeah,
small bit of the overall thing, right? And if I have someone who's driving over a bridge or taking a ride,
yeah,
right, they're only going to get a
right.
glimpse of something. And that something may or may not be important, right? It may be okay in some situations to have some apparent
Mm-hmm.
issue because it's designed like that. The building that I'm in is actually a building that we affectionately call the rust bucket
Oh,
because its facade is exposed metal
mm,
and it's designed to have a rust powder coat on it because
that's
that's
cool.
just a way to build a building 50 years ago. And it looks kind of cool, but it's brown, and it's okay because the entire facade is this this rust
Right.
metal thing, right? But you wouldn't want that same finish on a brand new glass
Right.
skyscraper,
Right.
right?
Right.
That would be out of
Yeah.
place.
Those are great civil infrastructure examples. I especially like what you said, that what we see is only a small part and requires much more instrumentation to get feedback for us to take meaningful action. So, Mike, drone inspections, AI, and machine learning to give us insights of those data. I'm curious, a CTO of sustainability software, what would you consider as success and know we have arrived at this future?
Well, the future is now. We live in 2023. I have I have a device that I walk around in my pocket that has a quad core processor, probably five different kinds of radios in it. You know, think about that for a second. I have
Mm-hmm.
four cameras actually thinking about it. Um,
Very true.
Laser scanners. Like I live in the future, man.
Yeah.
And that success point is us acknowledging
Mm.
that we have this data, we have the ability to drive insights. We can take all of these really gnarly, hard problems, like in ESG reporting and environmental reporting. You might hear a term like scope one emissions.
Mm. Yep.
That's how much carbon are you putting into the world, right? You measure that by your power draw, by the things you make, and a few other kind of
Mm-hmm.
fairly basic. This went in, that went out,
Yeah.
right? Scope two emissions is for your suppliers, for all the things you're consuming. How much carbon did they put in the world? So
Mm-hmm.
you ask the question to them, and you do the math. You say, okay, I bought 17,000 of this, I bought 5,000 of that, multiply by this, multiply by that, and here's the answer, right? My supply chain starts to affect me there.
Mm-hmm.
Scope three emissions, that's the important one,
Tough one. Yeah.
because that's the tough one that says for my suppliers, right? Going all the way back,
Supply chain. Yeah.
right? What's the complete supply chain? What's the complete story? And that's a data problem again, right?
Mm.
Knowing and acknowledging that we have this information available to us and then being able to orchestrate and pull it together
Mm-hmm.
means we need to be able to consume the data in the first place,
Mm.
make sense of it, normalize and drive it with a dashboard, right, to help drive insights. But then,
SRE can help you
second
with
from
that.
that, exactly right. Second from that, the key thing is that if I have a dashboard and I take no action from it, what good is it,
Yes.
right? That's the key thing. So
Mm.
now driving action back out, that's what matters. It's driving those actions into the real world. And that's where in the sustainability world, that full
Mm-hmm.
feedback loop of, hey, I pulled
Right.
this together, I have this insight. I can roll a truck and have someone go out and actually go touch that device and make a change or make a
Mm.
repair or make something to drive the feedback loop to closure, right?
Hmm.
That's to me, I think, when we've arrived, we can close all of it. And that's why I sit in sustainability, right?
Love that. The importance of driving action in the real world is what matters. Like in SR, you have this saying of
Mhm.
actionable alert. That is,
Oh,
don't
right.
alert someone or be a Slack PagerDuty unless the alert is actionable. And actionable means it can be by people or by automation. And the future is being able to inspect the outcome,
Hmm.
the whole feedback, and understand the impact of those actions. I think you just described how we operationalize data and
Hmm.
dashboard to arrive at this future.
Yeah, that's always the hard thing, right? Is choosing. We one thing I joke with my team about whenever we talk about prioritization is we have no short. We have way too many opportunities, challenges in front of us,
Yeah.
right? We can do a lot. It's choosing where are the two or three things
Mm-hmm.
that will affect the problem that's at hand
Right.
that we can make the most impact. That's the hard question to answer.
Mike, I was speaking with our colleague Chris Hammond, also in Austin,
Mm,
and I'll likely mess up the quote, but he said something. Like design is done not when we have nothing else to add, but when there's nothing else to take away.
Yep.
And his challenge was for us to be really intentional on what is a must have.
Oh yeah, I love that. That's so one of the things that I'm a huge fan of is design thinking practices, and there's a bunch of ways to do that. IBM has our practice, which is observe, make, reflect, or observe, reflect, make. Any order doesn't matter, but you must do all three, right? And it's that closing of the loop back that really is what enables you to take action and drive things like product market fit, or drive responsiveness, or drive a higher SLA, or drive an outcome for a constituent or for a customer.
I couldn't agree more. Closing the loop, the feedback is so critical. So, so Mike, let's pivot to call to actions.
Of course.
What would be your suggestion for a C-suite executive who may be listening and wonder what they need to do to get started?
The first thing is understanding what data you have, right? At the most basic level, so many enterprises have data silos within them, right? Either from mergers and acquisitions, or
Right.
different departments that came up at different times. That IT OT divide is the most basic one. And that's a true issue, right? Understanding what's available to you and just getting that inventory is step one, because you might be surprised at what you're already paying for at the most blunt level. But then two is, now that you have that, right, what do you need? Right? Where are the gaps? Where do you need to supplement something? Where do you need to draw an inference to understand what the inner workings are of some process or a machine? A good example of that is there's a massive customer of ours that makes cement, right? They they've got these massive facilities, and there's a core process where a machine the size of a Mack truck uh, takes at one end a bunch of raw material, and at the other end, one of the core constituent pieces of cement comes out, right? This kind of
Right.
fine powder, and you can't put sensors inside of it because it's literally these gigantic ball bearings and
Big
rocks
question.
tumbling around, right? But you can measure the output and you can measure the input and you can build a control loop, right? And if you're smart enough with the control loop, you can make a decision now that will affect your output in 2 hours, right? That inference enables you to drive a better result, as opposed to, oh, this is wrong. Hey, we need to fix it. And how do we fix it, right? Um, that basic, what do you have? What do you need? What do you need to create? To those questions are questions that I think anyone would do service to ask their teams and to start providing answers for. Once you have all of that, then the next question is, okay, how do I take action from it, right? Uh, I mentioned the idea of the feedback loop in terms of driving sensing information up to some higher level system. In our case, that's something like Envisi, which is our carbon accounting dashboard, right? But the actions that come out of that might drive, like I said, an actual person going into an actual physical location to go do actual work. It might drive shutting down a piece of equipment. It might drive reallocating some VMs because they're not being used, right? That those actions going out, similarly, you need to know what you can and can't do, or what you can push back to your suppliers and things like that. And those again will become some interesting questions, just to drive that choice of, okay, what's the top two or three things where you can take an action.
So ask the questions of understand what data you have, what's available to you, what do you need to understand the gaps to take action, and lastly, who and how can take action from it to drive better results and outcome. Now, Mike, switching to a site reliability engineer persona, and we love dashboards. What words of wisdom do you have for SREs who are also inspired by you and want to take actions to contribute to the sustainable future?
I, we talk about turning sustainability ambition into action,
Mm-hmm.
right? And site reliability engineering to me is one of those places where it it's almost too easy to fall into the trap of just taking action after action after action,
Mm,
right? In in a similar way, you can end up in a bad feedback loop where you're just responding to things, right? You're
mm-hmm.
not being proactive in situations. In SRE, we talk about proactive maintenance or proactive monitoring and all those things. I think sustainability is an extension of that
Mm,
premise because if I project forward, right,
mm-hmm.
in what action am I taking and what's the downstream implication of that,
Right.
then the most basic might be, hey, we have a spike coming because we're hitting the end of a quarter, so we need to ramp up or we need to adjust and what have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a different question might be, well, if this is going to happen, how can I plan for the workload in a way where I can still meet my SLA, but do it in a way that I spread the work out over cheaper, more
Mm,
sustainable compute, right?
true.
Right. Or how can I avoid doing undue work? A basic thing. I talk about high
Yeah.
velocity data pipelines with my team all the time.
Yeah.
We have an ingest pipeline for part of the Maximo Application Suite,
Mm,
and we're feeding millions of data points into it and driving a
mm-hmm.
bunch of cool stuff. But the the basic question there is, how can I do a computation once, right?
Ah.
How
Ah.
can I avoid having to do work
Mm-hmm.
multiple times? So if the application architecture is such that I can take bytes and parts of the data flow and save a partial answer and then use that later, right? I can literally
Mm-hmm.
save the compute. I can save the
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah.
And it moves the problem around, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's easier to to redo some math in Java because I'm sitting in a JVM and it's a simple
Right.
equation and I
It's a
have the data
click.
in front of
Yep.
me and right, it's just real quick. But if I'm talking about
Mm.
billions of rows of data, it starts to add up, right?
Yeah. Huh.
So I think those kinds of questions, that kind of thinking, that kind of stuff is a good opportunity to look at that broader impact. And those are, I think, the really gnarly problems that show up because, again, oftentimes,
Mm-hmm.
or rather, I have yet to meet someone who goes out to design something with malice, right? No one ever sets out to do a bad thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But over time, requirements change. Over
Mm.
time, the baseline assumptions change. What started
Yes.
out as a batch process that runs on seasonal basis now is being run every 2 minutes, 24/7,
Mm.
365, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those requirements drive a need to go back and reevaluate the architecture and reevaluate how you're providing service.
Yeah.
And that's where I think SRE is really positioned well because sitting at the point of observability, sitting at the point of
Mm-hmm.
architecture, sitting at the point of delivery, that's an
Mm-hmm.
essential pinnacle where you have
Yeah.
that all-seeing eye to be able to interact and kind of push and pull and make differences, I think, everywhere.
That's a so provoking response, Mike. I was just thinking we are all accustomed to doing laundry or running our dishwashers during off-peak hours to save money. So why haven't we asked the same question on when we run those jobs?
Mhm. Right. I mean, the big one there is frankly not even when can I postpone the job, is when can I start the job and when does it need to be finished, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Those are different questions.
Exactly. Not everything need to be executed immediately. And Mike, bringing in
Right.
the S from ESG,
Hmm.
as we have a diverse team, when we introduce someone with a different background, and when they ask, Kevin, Mike, why are we doing it this way? And if we can't answer it,
Hmm.
it is a trigger for change.
Absolutely. And that's why I love that idea of like the combined financial report. I mean, ESG, right? Environmental, social, governance. We lump those together, and that social aspect is super important. In fact, I'm a huge fan of blended multidisciplinary teams for that
Mm-hmm.
reason. And one of the most basic level, I can go back to the Renaissance period. If you ever heard of a book called The Medici Effect,
I
you
have
should
not.
go look for it.
Okay.
It's it the premise is that the Renaissance effectively happened because of this family, the Medicis, that were these patrons of science, patrons of art, where they brought so many people together from
Mm.
different backgrounds that you end up with like the Leonardo da Vinci's of the
Yeah.
world, right?
Right.
And it wouldn't have been possible. The science advances of the time, the art advances of the time, simply would not have happened without this
Mm-hmm.
blending together. So a similar thing I think is true in
Yeah.
operations and in building software and building systems. Uh, you should see the multidisciplinary background. We should see people from different, literally different backgrounds,
Yeah.
right, in the conversation. And that's, I think, essential because
Yes.
it offers you that chance to question, like you said, but it also offers you a
Yeah.
chance to look at the problem, right? I talk about
Mm-hmm.
gnarly problems. We there's this idea of trying to work on what's the most impactful thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's often the question is, hey, where can I have the most impact?
Yeah.
And those problems are not easy, right? Those are
Yes.
not going to be slam dunks. If they were, they wouldn't be they'd be done, right? and
Yeah.
and there's no clear answer. So when you
Yeah.
start weighing these hypotheticals, or you start looking at, well, hey,
Yeah.
there's no past to build on here,
Yeah. Yeah.
having that diverse perspective really means that you can have someone say, well, yeah, so uh, I, I, I did this because, I worked on a project this one time, and,
Mm-hmm.
it was just how we figured it out because this was a similar
Yeah.
queuing problem or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
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 And that's cool. We need that.
Well said. Diversity drives innovation and challenges the status quo. We can totally have a sequel episode on this topic.
Oh yeah.
So, Mike, in closing, I'd like to go back to the inspiration of the podcast. What would be your ingredient and recipe for companies to turn their sustainability ambition into action and outcome?
I think that the that premise of data, right? Knowing the salt and pepper seasoning that you need there, the the fact that there's these pockets and pools of different information is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely essential, right? And then being able to organize it and make sense of it, that's got to be the recipe to an extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that that data capability, taking that, organizing it, building it into an AI model, building it into a heuristic that can drive your dashboard, right, to answer your question. You've got to have that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you're just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. And, you know, like I said, we live in the future. We
Mm-hmm.
live in the we live in the era of being able to ask for a car and in 2 minutes it's outside the door, right? Think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I can pay for things without ever having touched anything from
Yeah.
this device that's this smart, telecommunicator, or whatever, Star Trekky, whatever example you want to offer. We have to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
And a good challenge to think about, right? Take these as a moment, right? This is not a phone, right?
Mm.
This to me is a very smart edge device. It has CPUs, it has sensors, it has telemetry, it has software
Mm-hmm.
running on it, it has uh, a jail or hypervisor or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's a way to drive these things that you can use to notice, for example, are is the building occupied, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Can I do that in a way that's private? Can I do it in a way that's going to be sustainable for not just me as an enterprise, but for my employees or for my constituents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that I think matter.
I love it. The future is now, everyone. Embrace the amazing technology and tools to gather, organize, and surface action from the data. Thank you so much, Mike, for spending the time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin.
I also like to thank you, the audience, for listening. I am Kevin Yu, Principal SRE of IBM Sustainability Software. See you on future episode where we continue to talk about how the practice of SRE can lead us to a more sustainable future.